Hello, everybody, and welcome to Meet the Congregation. Revolutions Meet the Congregation, in case you got the wrong church, where we meet the congregation. Today we have a special guest host with us, our buddy Kurt. You may have heard him speak at Revolution before. He's here today, and as always, it's Jay and Caleb. And today we are interviewing Heather from Quebec, Canada.
Do you say Quebec or Quebec, Heather? Quebec?
Either is good. I think it's Quebec.
Quebec.
Well, it's French.
That's the French way to say it, but I'm not French, so I pretty much don't pay any attention to what I say about Quebec.
Aren't you supposed to speak French in Quebec?
You are, I guess, supposed to. I mean, it certainly helps to get around.
Do you learn it like in school?
You do, but there's nothing like the real world to really just throw you in there and immerse yourself
For sure.
into the language. I mean, school only really gets you so far. They'll
Definitely.
tell you how to do something correct, but in Quebec, pretty much anything goes. So just act like you know what you're saying, and people will pretty well get the gist of what's going on.
Nice.
Worked for me so far.
Okay. Yeah, I have friends who live in Alberta. I remember them talking about, like, Quebec and the rest of Canada almost separated.
Well, there have historically two, like, referendums where the people of Quebec have been given the option to separate from the rest of Canada, and both times have been no.
Oh, that's good.
So, you know, so far so good. We're still Canadian, but I guess a lot of people identify as Quebec first,
Oh.
and then they're Canadian. But it depends on who you talk to.
It's almost like Texas in the
I
U.S.
know. They're like,
That's kind of what it feels like. But I'm born here, so
How do you say your last name, Heather?
my last name is actually Jackson.
Oh, okay.
But I go by Agronomade.
Okay. Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, it's more French, so you kind of
way more French.
Because Heather is not a French name, so you kind of have to, squeak by a little bit.
Well, there's your Canadian lesson today on Meet the Podcast. So, what do we usually do here?
How long have you been listening, Heather?
I think I started really listening in the month of January of this year.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Like, I have heard about Revolution Church for many, many, many years, and had kind of like been in and out of sort of the scene. But really, it was this winter that I sort of, I guess, started binge listening,
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
as they say.
Nice. We like binge
Yeah.
listeners.
Yeah.
What got you? I mean, you've heard about us, but I mean, what got you listening?
Well, the first time I heard of Revolution Church was through the Sundance documentary
Yep.
that you were in. Growing up in Quebec, having a satellite television was kind of like a revolutionary thing, so I was able to watch movies and videos and be exposed to things that were completely outside of my immediate community for the first time, and seeing that, people can start a church. I didn't know that was something that people did, but you did it, so that's pretty cool. And also seeing that there was a side of, I guess, Christianity that was not for LGBTQ people, and I didn't know that was a thing. I thought, well,
Oh, really?
to love everybody, like I thought that was completely like anomaly, really. So seeing what you did with Revolution was kind of like, well, obviously, like you'd want to include like a large number of people that live and breathe just like everyone else.
Yeah. No-brainer.
No brainer, right? So I guess I just kind of kept in sort of, contact in and out through Instagram, which I really enjoy, and
Me too,
just sort
too
of got
much.
back into it.
Cool.
Yeah, it was just like, wanting to learn more about grace, because that was never a part of my upbringing. So,
Were you raised in a certain denomination, or were you raised Christian at all?
no, not at all. I was raised in a household that didn't have any Christianity, really, but culturally is sort of like ubiquitous throughout North America, really. It's kind of hard to get away from Jesus sometimes.
Right.
And wanting to understand that in a language that I understood. I mean, I went to CEGEP, which is sort of like junior college in Quebec. Our education system is completely different than the rest of the world. And reading the Bible sort of like in an academic way. And just being like, this is not really what I understand at all. Like, I didn't understand anything, because we're not looking at something, I guess, in a concrete way. Like, it's a lot of metaphors.
Mm-hmm.
And just sort of breaking it down into a language in school, I still didn't understand, even though I was being told to write essays on, the book of Genesis, and was like, I have no idea. And just hearing Jay talk and just sort of, giving pointers, being like, oh, okay, this is what is more or less what he got out of it, so it seems to make sense to me, so I just keep listening and try to read the Bible in that way, because doing it on your own is kind of difficult.
Yeah, it feels kind of crazy. I remember when I first tried to read the New Testament through, and I was like, man, these gospel stories sure are redundant.
They kind of repeat themselves over and over again. I have no idea why. So I really appreciated like that honesty and your own stories that you're bringing to the congregation. And even though I'm really far away, I'm still kind of feel like a part of it. Like there's like that humanity that you kind of bring back to it.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know a lot of churches. I'm an outsider.
Right.
To the max. So I really appreciate bringing that kind of human aspect.
Well, that means a lot to hear. I mean, that's kind of like you're like the dream listener. It's like, oh, you want somebody to kind of come out from there and just be like, be interested for
what it is, and not because you're working on deconstructing some broken system that you inherited, kind of thing.
Yeah, because we have a lot of, especially in the States, a lot of disillusioned people who come out and are trying to reconcile their, is there anything to even save from it, because it's been so distorted and so bastardized and Americanized that it's like, is there anything to these stories that we can even hold on to? And so we have a lot of that, which has been interesting. So January, you just decided to start listening, which we've had a few people we've interviewed for Meet the Congregation, who we haven't had a whole lot of long time listeners.
Yeah.
And
Just
so
a couple.
January, it's October. So that is 11 months, 9 months.
9 months,
yeah.
10 months.
10 months, yes.
Yeah, something like
some
that.
of us can do math. Canadians are supposed to do better math than us. Our school systems suck. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty crazy because for me, I look back again at my year, and this has been the most difficult year for me mental health-wise. And it's just interesting that people have connected with the church during this time and kind of been like, yeah, I find it interesting, and I stay connected because I just been like, I thought this was going to be like the end, not a new beginning.
Yeah, I keep praying that Jay has more, troubles and tribulations so that he can keep attracting more listeners.
There's just so many.
Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate that.
But I mean, that's also like a really universal thing. I mean, no, not everyone has gone specifically through what you have. I mean, it's unfortunate that people have, but also there's that connectedness like when you hit that really raw note, you can't help but relate to it and want to support it and keep being there and being like, when I first was listening, I'm just like, man, this is really tough. Like, that's when you need it the most.
Wow.
You know, like, this is something, someone's really dealing with what they're going through, and I've been there.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it now. It was years ago, but it's still, I don't want to say triggering, but I mean, it took me a really long time, I guess, like 2 weeks to listen to your last podcast about your mental health and sort of like part one, I guess, of your sermon. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm ready to hear this, but I kind of need to hear it at the same time.
Yeah.
Because it is so important, and it is something that affects so many people. If it's not you, it's someone you know. That's the problem with mental health, is that it affects so many of us, and if we stay silent, that's when really bad things happen. So the more that we talk about it and the more that we try to understand it and share our stories with other people, that's the good work. That's the good word. You know, it's not always good news, but
Yeah.
it's real. And you can't help but connect to that.
Yeah, it's tough too, because when you've gone through it and you start to come out of it, it does get that feeling of like, do I want to talk about this? Because I just kind of want to be through with it. But I think it's important to keep the conversation going and let other people who know who are going through that hell, that you know, there is light at the end of the tunnel, even though it's so hard to believe, because I didn't believe it when people were telling me. I was like it's going to get better and you're going to be a different person. I'm like, yeah, whatever. This is never going to end. Felt like time slowed down. Felt like the last year of my life was 10 years, not a year. And but yeah, so I see why I can kind of see why people don't talk about it, but you're right. I think it's important to do, and I'm starting to see more of it online and more of it on Instagram and things like that, and that's really encouraging.
Yeah, and I think it's important to let you know that we're standing by you as well, because it's easy to feel isolated.
It really
And
is.
I think you're really lucky to have a real huge microphone that people are listening to you around the world. I mean, it's me in Canada, it's someone else in Northern Ireland. I mean, this is real. Like, you actually are able to go through this, and it's, you know, it's not pretty, but it is what it is, as the Americans say, I guess.
No, it's amazing. No, it is amazing to have people to connect with. I'm going to be in Northern Ireland in about 12 days, a little less, and then, you know, get to see our buddy out there, and that'll be pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
So when you started binging, Heather, did you start with like the first episodes, or I'm just curious because like when I first started listening to Revolution, I'd already been familiar with Jay, but when I was like, oh, there's this podcast, I started with like the when he was reading through the Tillich sermons. Jay, remember?
That was in my apartment.
Yeah. So that's I kind of started there and then started binging forward. So I was just curious what your trajectory was as far as diving in.
Well, I guess I was listening through the Tumblr site.
Oh, yeah.
So it was listening through, I guess I would just start with the most recent episode, like whatever I came up with, and then like was listening to it kind of like backwards.
Oh, sure.
So it was like sort of like going down the page, I guess, instead of like
yeah.
this story, instead of like a Memento style kind of thing, and being like, damn, I hope it gets through this. Like, I better keep listening.
It's like a Tarantino format.
Yeah, something like that. And then, I mean, I got Spotify too, so I get the updates, and I sort of listen when I'm gardening or when I'm by the lake is actually really nice. That's always sort of been like my church, is being out in nature, feeling the quiet, and Jay's voice.
Nice.
And sometimes Caleb or Kurt or
And
somebody
so
else.
Caleb, and yeah.
Cool. Have you ever gone? Have you been to like a physical church? Have you sampled any other flavors, as it were?
I once went to a Christmas service. It was the winter that my parents got divorced, and it was my first Christmas, sort of like with my mom, and being like, well, what did you used to do? Like, just sort of figuring out what the old traditions were, so to speak. And she said that with her parents, she would go to church on Christmas Eve. So we did that, and it was all well and good, I think, except there came a time where I really felt that, I guess the church is sort of like an institution of initiation,
Right.
where I had not been initiated. So everyone kind of got up to do this thing. I don't know what it was. I was like maybe 10 or 11 years old at the time. And so I kind of, got up in a line like I was supposed to, I guess, but not, because they were like, oh, well, you're not baptized, so you can't
it's a
really do
Catholic
this
service.
part of the
Oh,
ritual.
geez.
So I was like, okay, I guess I'll go sit down in shame. Like, I can't be a part of this. But, I mean, I don't remember much of it, I guess. I mean, it was a long time ago. It was like 20-something years ago.
Well, it's so weird that you're like kind of non-churched and you're listening to a church online.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't feel that there's inherently anything wrong with church.
Right.
I mean, there's always, like, to be, like, part of that community. I mean, I'm involved with sports, so, like, that's sort of, like, a bit of a community, but also feeling like spiritually supported is really nice as well. And not having ever had that, this is kind of like the replacement, I guess, for that.
We'll take that.
Yeah, and just, the whole, like, punk rock kind of DIY scene. I mean, podcasts, what's better than that?
Right.
You record stuff, you put it on the internet, and you're a part of a community now. So
That's awesome.
It's really cool.
You
Yeah.
should see where we're at right now. It's pretty punk rock. Almost a squat.
We're in an abandoned building with a shitty laptop.
Tarps.
Yeah,
Tarp.
and it's really dark. Or something.
Not far off.
So have you started, are you reading anything besides the Bible or just normal books or, I don't know?
I read sort of a lot of different kinds of books. I actually just started reading Stephen King last night.
Oh, okay.
It's October, so you got to get spooky.
Yeah.
And I've read a lot of like sacred ecology, I guess. I just finished reading Silent Spring, being concerned with our environment,
Right.
Just trying to get to some of the fundamentals, how to make this world not fall apart.
Yeah.
Would be like really great. And I guess, I mean, going back to the New Testament, I'm like, there must be answers. I don't know.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of cars or emissions. Or
Yeah, right.
Oh,
fossil
no,
fuels.
I know. There's a lot of other issues, but, carbon was not very high up in the list.
You could probably find some sort of reference to global warming in Revelation. You can make that book say anything you want.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. But, I mean, I'm also a florist, so anytime there's, like, a reference to, like, a natural world, like whether it's, like, the mustard seed is there's something to be picked apart there, which I really like. What else am I reading that isn't, like, really embarrassing? It's a lot of young adults, so I won't go there.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
was there anything you'd like to say to the broader congregation or anything like that?
Keep sharing your stories, whatever it is. I mean, keep making art. I mean, it really hit me what you said about keep doing the work, like you've done the work.
Yeah.
I feel like that's really powerful. And just, I mean, whatever that is, because that's sacred. like you are yourself sacred. I guess like come from that kind of, I don't know, like growing up in a place where there was no spiritual world. You kind of have to like make one. So
I like that.
And I mean, you've got yourself, you've got your stories, your job, your family, whatever that is, and just really honoring that and like your energy that you put out there. Just keep making it like as you can. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think that's really important, and that's part of like the revolution kind of mindset. If that's being a revolutionary, then go for it. If that's keeping your head down and just focusing on what you need to do that. I don't think our gut has ever lied to us so far. Like, we're still very instinctual people. We want to be with like-minded people, but we also need to be able to question people that we don't agree with in a sane and non-violent manner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people want to kind of crush the desire to live the way you want to live, or there's always people who like want to put in their 2 cents and like, oh, that's great, but you should do this or this or this, and in AA they always said, don't let someone should on you. And it seems like that's always been my problem is struggling with like people pleasing.
So yeah, we just had a little bit of technical interference there. Sorry about that. Can you pick up on what you were just saying though? That was really good.
Oh, let's see what I was saying. I think I was talking about
like being yourself,
being true to yourself, kind of like almost like going out of your way to not, truck someone over. I mean, those are pretty core values that I think should be, I mean, I don't want to say should because that's kind of like the taboo term, but it's pretty, a very basic sort of code for people to follow. Just you do you, as they say.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to respect other people as well. Like if you respect yourself, you kind of automatically respect the boundaries that other people set. You don't want to step on anyone. I mean, it's not about being like a sensitive person, but just honoring what other people are going through as well. It's really important.
Awesome. Is there anything, we always wrap up with this question, is there anything that we're doing that you'd like to see more of, or that we're not doing that you would like us to investigate, putting effort into, or is there any feedback, constructive or otherwise, that you can give us as to how we can do things better?
Well, I definitely have been liking everything that you've been putting out so far. So that's good. And I think it's really cool that Jay's being a part of like the retreat that's happening, the Spark. Like, that's really cool.
Oh, yeah, out in Belfast?
Yeah, and just being a part of like trying to do like a really like sort of like those intensive experiences that I really like. Like, I'm not able to do that, obviously, because of life constraints, but I think doing that is really important to really get to the core of certain issues that it's hard to get to in sort of like a 45-minute, 1 hour, speech or sermon or what have you, and just like bringing that like human concept back into, I guess, the Bible, or just bringing it back into like sort of like a cultural, larger aspect of that in an intense experience, I think is really cool. For people to be a part of that is really special.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, Heather, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and really amazing and grateful that you listen, and really helps me, encourages me to keep going, and nice to hear another new perspective that I haven't heard before from someone who's part of the congregation.
Well, I'm really happy for all of the work that you're putting in, and just lâche pas, don't give up. I know it's not easy, But I definitely feel that something that's happening is there. It's good. It's uncomfortable, but I think it's really important to kind of keep doing, as ugly or as beautiful as it is, and I will keep listening, and I will be there. And I'm sorry for the technical sort of issues that we've been having, but
No, it's not your fault at all.
okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been awesome. We'll hopefully see you on Instagram.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. You can count on that.
Okay.
All right, take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.